Hello and welcome to my close passage analysis overview and explanation. The amount of time required to do this is significant, but I'm hoping that once you've done it once or twice, it should really help you to draw out what you think about the story and how the author has chosen to create it. So our learning intention for this video is to understand the categories and the questions that you'll need to go through and use to make your own close analysis. So for you, the success criteria will be, I will be able to complete a close passage analysis by myself without assistance. That's the goal. So the first category is first impressions, and it has 4 questions. So the first question, what is the first thing you notice about this passage? So just don't try and think too hard, just snap it off. The first thing you think of, write it down. The second, what is the second thing? And again, be quick, be sharp, be snappy. Don't write a paragraph, write one sentence or a couple of words. Okay, now the third question, this is where you analyze, you compare, you contrast. So you're gonna have to think a little bit about this. How do the first thing you've listed and the second compare, contrast, contradict, do they go together? Write why and why you think this is the case. And the fourth question is a little bit more emotional and a little bit more analytical. What mood is created in this passage and why do you think it was done that way? And you can also think about how this made you feel or how you related to the text at this point. Alright, so this takes us to our first question, which I want you to put in the comment section of this YouTube video. Okay, so this is our first question, and for this you'll need to be logged in with your Google or YouTube account so that you can make a comment on this video. So there is a total of 8 questions for this video, and so what I want you to do is open the comment tab and type, but don't post it yet because there will be 7 more to come. So your first task, write a 1 and then some sort of a symbol and tell me all the words you can think of to describe a mood. So the second section is vocabulary and diction. So this is where we're thinking about the words used and how they put together. So the first question is, what words did you notice and why did they jump out to you? Why are they significant? Circle those, highlight those, underline them, whatever you need to do. So now look back at the marks you've made on the page. The words you've circled as significant, how do they relate to each other? Do they correspond or do they contrast? Do they go together? Would that make sense as a group or a family of words? Or are they very different? Why do you think this is? Question 3. Are any of these words oddly used? Circle these and try and think why. Question 4. Do any of these words have double or triple meanings? Do they have especially powerful connotations? If there's a couple that stick out as especially connotation rich, you might want to draw out a couple of little lines coming off the word and explain what connotations spring to mind for you when you read that word. And the 5th question is optional. If there's any words you don't know, now would be a really good time to look them up. If it's an older text, say a piece of Shakespeare's work or something similar, you might want to look in the OED, which is the Oxford English Dictionary, to check for definitions and whether the word is archaic or still in use. So again, scroll down on the video to the comment section you've got open with your first response. For this question, list as many words as you can think of that you would describe as archaic or out of use. So the third section is discerning patterns. This is where we're looking for things that run common throughout the book and how this passage represents them. So the first question is there an image in this passage that reminds you of another part of the book? This could be a symbol or a motif in that it recurs, or it could be something that you've felt or considered or imagined in another part of the text. It doesn't necessarily need to be something we've discussed in class or something we've explained, but something that for you is similar to a previous part of the book. This could be an emotion, a sense, or even a feeling. Second question, how might this image or symbol or motif, or whatever you're calling it, fit in within the wider context? How does this passage represent that? Is it a turning point or just a reiteration of the same concept? Okay, so this is a really good analysis question, the third question. How is this passage a microcosm, which is where a part represents the whole, representative of the story? If you gave this passage to someone and you tried to sum up the entire story using only this passage, how would it make sense? How would you make it clear to them? So question 4 is about sentence structure. Are the sentences long? Are they short and sharp? Are they choppy? In terms of this, you could think about the 3 main types of sentence structure: simple sentence, compound, and complex, as a rough guide to get this started, but I want you to be a little bit more thoughtful about this. How has the author used sentence structure to send a message in this passage? Remember, longer sentences are more informative, whereas shorter sentences are better for action sequences. Think about that as a rough guideline, and how does this passage represent that? Question 5, look at the punctuation. Is there anything strange about this? Is there anything you notice as being out of the ordinary or unlike other authors? Note these down and circle them on your page. Question 6, is there any repetition in the passage? Again, circle or highlight these words and try and think why this repetition is used and what effect it has. So question 7 won't apply to all passages, but it's an interesting one to throw in as an idea. So what types of writing are included in this passage? Think about dialogue, narrative, description, poetry, essay, argument. What forms are represented in this passage? Question 8 is very analytical. Can you recognize any paradoxes or problems in the way the author is presenting their characters or their story at this point? Anything that doesn't make sense or that could be seen as an error or a mistake. Question 9. What is left out or kept hidden or secret in this piece of writing? Consider whose perspective it's written from, and if there's ever any occasion for the audience to know something that the characters don't, or for the characters to know something that the audience doesn't. So this is your third comment question. Write an image that was brought into your mind whilst reading this passage of the text. This doesn't have to be anything that you've been led to believe. It could even be something that only you would have picked up on or only you foreseed or visualized while you're reading this. So be original, be creative. What did you think of while you read this piece? Okay, so your fourth comment question is as follows. List as many types of writing as you can think of. So I just mentioned some earlier. Try and think of your own that you could add to our list. So our fourth subject is point of view and characterization. So our first question is very straightforward. How does this passage make us think about characters or plot within the story? What view does it suggest to the reader? Question 2. This requires you to think about the 5 senses. Are there any sounds, scents, smells, tastes that are discussed in this passage that are consistent as a poetic motif or a literary motif? Question 3 is about characterization and dialogue. Who speaks in this passage, why, and what effect does this have? And also, how do they speak? Alright, so this is our 5th comment question. All you have to do is write a sentence which shows an example of an omniscient narrator, which is someone that sees everything and knows everything. Section 5 is symbolism. First question, are there any metaphors? What kind? So think about what 2 things are being compared or contrasted or shown to be similar and why this might be the case. Question 2, is there one controlling metaphor, which is where one metaphor is used almost as an extended metaphor to draw across the entire passage or the entire page. Question 3, how might objects in this passage represent other things? So this is symbolism in its purest state. How does that one thing send a message about something else or a broader concept? The way the character treats a dog or an animal or the weight stuff, how does that indicate something about them as a deeper person? So question 4 might require a little bit of internet research to get a little bit deeper onto this stuff. So the question is, are there any colors, objects, animals, plants that have specific meanings? So for this you might need to do a pretty beige Google search to find some ideas, but say a unicorn, type in unicorn significance meaning, and then try and connect that to the piece of writing. The assumption is that the author did everything on purpose and they were fully aware of what they were doing. So if Google says that an object, an animal, or a plant represented in the story has a bigger significance, we're going to say that the author did this on purpose. Whether that's the case or not, that's how literary criticism works. And the last question is a pretty niche one. It might not apply to many passages at all. If there are multiple symbols in the passage, could this be representative of an allegory, which is where a small subset of things represent something different or something bigger. The classic example being George Orwell's Animal Farm, where the animals represent Stalinist Russia. Okay, so your 6th comment question is, note down or research your own figure of speech. Alright, and the 6th and final category is importance. So the first and only question is, why is what you've just explained important or useful? How does it help a reader or an outsider understand the text better? Our last 2 comment questions are as follows. Note down your opinion of the author's overall message from the novel or the text you're studying. And the last 2 points are, note down any questions or things you didn't fully understand from this presentation. And the last thing is, note down what you think will be the hardest of these 6 sections to complete with your passage analysis you've been given.